welcome to Newsclick. Number of JNU students have been arrested and detained on the charges of sedition, including the JNUSU President Kanhaiya Kumar. To discuss the issue, we have with us Prabir Purkayastha, an ex-student of JNU who was arrested during emergency and was in jail for a year. He is also the chief editor of Newsclick. Students have been arrested. The JNUSU president has been arrested yesterday. Many of the people have been detained today. The charges of sedition have been slapped on them. What's your response on it?
I think there are three different issues involved. One is, of course, that JNU has been a place where there's been a freedom of discussion, dissent, ability to discuss various issues without strong arm tactics being used by any organization. What we're seeing today is really a continuation of what happened during emergency, when there was an attempt to clamp down on all forms of dissent by essentially the police authorities coming in. We had again campus being surrounded, as happened yesterday and is continuing today, people being dragged off to the police stations, being arrested, put behind bars for considerable periods. So this is one part of it, but the state has openly come in favor of a student organization, in this case the ABVP, which has been raising this kind of arguments that anybody who opposes them is anti-national. So this is one part of it, and I think the fact that the education minister, the home minister, all of them are intervening shows that they don't seem to have too much work to do in running the departments, but they're too busy now fighting the battle for ABVP and other student organizations. We saw also the same issue in Hyderabad Central University, where actually the ministers, two ministers, one of them again was education minister, other was Bandaru Dattatreya. Both of them were busy fighting ABVP's battles. So having been somehow not being able to make any headway in the student movement, they seem now to need the ministers to fight their battles, and in this use the police as an instrument to stifle all opposition. I think this is one part of it.
Prabir, if I'm right, it has been for the second time that the JNUSU president has been arrested. One was during the emergency. If we go by the record of BJP itself, many of its ministers, Lal Krishna Advani himself said that we are living in the times of emergency, and it's almost an undeclared emergency that we are living in. The police is going inside, dragging out students, and the male police people are going into the hostel of women students. So I mean, what's your take on that? Are we actually living in the times of emergency?
Well, I wouldn't say that this has become the norm in the country. So this is really exceptional in the sense of JNU being targeted specifically, and I still think that we have a lot more space today than we had during emergency in the rest of the country. But yes, if we are not able to stand up to this, if we are not able to defend what the JNU students are facing, then I think the threat is that if this can be done in one institution, why not in others? So there's a sense of that you could get a creeping emergency in the country if we're not able to stop what's happening in JNU. But I'm sure that given the people's belief in the right of dissent, right of free speech, the right for open discussion on all issues, I don't think this attempt to muzzle other groups, other voices will succeed. I do think that JNU for them will be a big overreach and it will backfire on them.
Why do you think JNU has been always the target of RSS and ABVP, while there are other universities also, but JNU has been prime focus?
Well, of course, I would say that in this case, the Hyderabad Central University was really the first target, and Rohit Webilo was an example of that. I think I would see this as a continuation. I would also see that this is a continuation of different kinds of politics they're introducing in higher education, changing the curriculum, changing the kind of administrative bodies that exist, putting in people who have very little education qualifications, and overall the education minister herself, whose education qualifications are a different issue, but the way she's been running these departments, the universities and so on, or intervention in them, has been really almost running it like a personal fiefdom. So this is one part of it. JNU, of course, has always been an important what shall we say, important bastion for a certain kind of thinking, which is critical, which does not kowtow to the kind of RSS ideology that is being spread by this government and others, which essentially wants to wipe off what would be the history of India. The fact that RSS played no role in the freedom movement, that the freedom movement was done by all other forces except the RSS, and therefore its nationalism is deeply suspect. So when Rajnath Singh or the Education Minister Smriti Irani talks about Mother India and so on, they are also trying to hide from the public eye the fact that this Mother India had nothing to do what they have done in the past. Their nationalist credentials are not only deeply suspect, they are always against the national movement. And the second part of it, Mother India is very strong. It doesn't need Rajnath Singh's or Smriti Irani's. It will survive. It will weaken if people start looking in the fridges to see what meat is being consumed. It will weaken if the voice of dissent is silenced. I think Mother India was really going to be sacrificed at the altar of this kind of aberrant and distorted nationalism.
Prabir, this entire series of incidents has also raised questions on the left organizations and the left groups, the sloganing which was done and the event which was organized. What's your response on that?
I would argue that if, for instance, a particular death penalty was done in the case of Afzal Guru, in this case, I think people have a right to say they think it is wrong. By saying a particular death penalty is wrong does not constitute either sedition, nor does it constitute any crime. In fact, the Supreme Court has been very clear that we have the right to disagree on all these issues, and only if there is an incitement to violence, then only the sedition charge can be used. So these kinds of issues that are being raised are essentially to raise temper, raise the kind of, as I said, ultra-nationalism and stifle dissent and discourse. Other students' left organizations have said that though they don't agree with the demands, that some of the demands of the students who were there, but they agreed that they have a right to talk about it, they have a right to protest. I think that's perfectly valid. The question is, death penalty is something that in this country a whole bunch of people have opposed. Political parties have taken a position regarding death penalty, that they think it is wrong, and all death penalties being wrong, forget only one. So I think in this case, to make this as a test of nationalism, it's a test of distorted nationalism, not test of nationalism by any means.
Prabir, this would be my last question. If we look at entire last 1.5 years of this government, now going to be 2 years, there has been a strong resistance that has been created by students. Pune, Hyderabad, now Delhi. So what do you see? What is the way ahead?
I think it's very clear that within the last 18 months, the BJP-led government has not been able to fulfill either its economic promises. In fact, the only economic promises it has fulfilled are to the rich and the capitalist class. So the poor are suffering the consequences of lack of employment, inflation, a lack of the wage rates are in fact have declined. So there is a overall, instead of expansion of the economy, there is actually a deceleration and even if a collapse of the economy in certain areas. So this is on one side what is happening. The other side is that the only things they seem to be interested in doing is to raise the, as I said, the nationalist fervor and bring in a particular kind of nationalism in which Muslims are out, the Dalits are out, the left is out, and only people who would be willing to talk about Ganesha's head being grafted onto a human body in ancient times become the true nationalists. So this is the kind of danger that we are seeing. I'm sure that the people in this country will reject this kind of politics. They rejected the national movement and they'll reject it again. So what we see in terms of the resistance, I think that needs to be nurtured and built, and there's a need for everybody to come together to oppose this kind of distortion of the Indian nation.
That's a very positive note to leave on, and thanks for giving us your time. We'll be coming back to you on such issues again. Thanks a lot. Thank you for watching Newsclick.